Hello and welcome back to Why Geopolitics Matter, the podcast. In this week's episode, we'll cover Xi Jinping's visit in North Korea to push for stronger ties between both countries, then the alumina scandal in Ireland in the context of the Ukraine war, and finally protests in Albania over a controversial project linked to Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. So let's get into it. So let's start with a story that may sound more like something from a zoo than a geopolitics podcast. This week took place the Hello Nigeria 2026 Panda Painting Interactive Experience. Government officials and high school students gathered in Abuja, Nigeria. This event celebrated the 55 years of diplomatic relations between Nigeria and China. So the participants painted artwork with the theme of pandas. They had dance choreographies, singing performances, and more. The representatives highlighted the friendship between the two countries, and Chinese officials described the panda as a symbol of peace, harmony, and also mentioned that this type of cultural exchanges allowed the deepening of mutual understanding between both nations. But what's interesting is that it could be considered as part of something called the panda diplomacy that China has used for decades. So in the early years of the People's Republic of China, pandas were gifted to allies in effort to strengthen political and economic relationships. One of the most famous examples came from 1972, after the visit of President Richard Nixon to China. So then Beijing sent two pandas to the United States as relations between the two countries began to improve. And since then, pandas have become one of China's diplomatic tools. So now you know that geopolitics could also be about bamboo and pandas.
It's so interesting that you found this because it's one of my favorite ways. It's so diplomatic and heartfelt for a way to get into the kids' hearts as well. I remember going to the Smithsonian Zoo as a kid because we lived right outside of Washington, D.C. And I remember going and visiting the pandas. And growing up, it was such a big deal on the local news that they had panda cams when they started putting cameras into the zoos. I remember that growing up, and it was a big deal. And it gives you kind of a way to relate with a different country, even though you can't ever visit there, but you can visit one of their most famous animals in the local zoo. So that kind of soft power to send out into the world is such a great way to have better relations between two countries, especially when they're so ideologically different.
Exactly. And what you said, it's soft power. It's a way of actually building familiarity and a show of goodwill, but to make two societies come together and form an understanding that will, down the road, after a couple of years, with people or with these kids growing up with a positive image of China, like this may shape decisions, political decisions in the future. So it's an intelligent move and a cute move. What can I say?
Double whammy.
Great. Now, let's delve into our first topic. So, Meredith, please go ahead.
We'll stay on China for the time being, as Chinese President Xi Jinping's first visit to North Korea in 7 years occurred this week to underscore their commitment to deepening cooperation and rebuilding of their complicated traditional alliance. Xi and Kim Jong-un met in Beijing in September after viewing a military parade alongside the Russian President Vladimir Putin and other foreign leaders. And from what Western media can verify from this most recent meeting, it's that the leaders discussed a joint push for greater cooperation, but there were no mentions of North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons. So more about that a little bit later. According to China's state broadcaster, CCTV, the summit discussion covered trade, agriculture, construction, and technology. But there was also mentions of respective sovereignty and security interests, which is very important for both countries at this time. The North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reiterated this to the official Korean Central News Agency by saying that North Korea and China will maintain their friendship as the most important top priority strategic work, as well as support for Beijing's One China principle. This is perceived as a reference to Beijing's official position that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. Also, this meeting is important to both countries as China wants to keep traditional allies in their orbit, where they're able to provide food and economic incentives to North Korea, because this has been waning a little bit since the beginning of Russia's invasion into Ukraine. The North Koreans and Russians have increased their ties through military support. And these ties include military equipment and manpower. There's been suggestions that North Korean troops have been on the front lines in Ukraine. So, in response, North Korea needs something more out of Russia, but they are unable to get that kind of support to grow their economy. So, China would be useful for Kim to increase the living standards for North Koreans while they maintain their self-reliant economic system. There's also been speculation prior to the meeting that the two leaders would discuss tourism, many Chinese going into North Korea, but there does not seem to be any kind of decision since then. Two subjects that I flagged that were really interesting to go into was that they avoided any kind of talk about denuclearization. And the other subject matter was navigation rights on the Tumen River. Both of these are really, really important because everybody wants to know what is going on with the navigation rights and what's happening with the nuclear program in North Korea. So for the denuclearization issue, this was a topic brought up when Trump recently visited China. The PRC Foreign Ministry spokesman stated that China pursues its own path to a peaceful settlement on the issues, which is basically saying we're going to do our own thing. And after the summit with Kim, China continued to duck this topic. They did not make a public statement, and they asserted that the Chinese position remained consistent. So basically, they're not giving up anything to say that they have made any demands on the North Korean regime. So with that is still very murky. Nothing has really been, so there's been no public announcement on that issue. But the other issue is really important regionally, where the Tumen River is China's longstanding interest in the navigation rights would be to open up a new development opportunities for northeastern China and provide a strategic vantage point for activities into the Sea of Japan. The Chinese border runs about 15 kilometers short of the mouth of this waterway, and as a result of the 1860 Treaty of Peking, a agreement was signed with Russia that China considers unequal. So this treaty awarded the territory to Russia, which now shares the river with North Korea. And opening the navigation rights along the lower Tumen River would significantly expand China's operation foundations for electronic warfare, submarine rescue operations, anti-submarine warfare, and joint maneuvering in the northern East Sea. Although China, Russia, and North Korea have been discussing granting Chinese vessels navigation rights on the Tumen River since 2024, still no agreement has been reached, but it was something that is in the back of everybody's minds, especially Japan.
Absolutely. And, well, you mentioned the situation from the perspective of North Korea, how valuable the relationship with China is to get those elements that they need that they cannot get from Russia, right? But you can also see it from the Chinese perspective because I think that it is very convenient for Xi to have some kind of influence or leverage still on North Korea now that they are trying to diversify with Russia precisely. I think for the Chinese economy, it is very important to keep their economy going. And Kim Jong-un is a wild card, I would say. They keep developing nuclear weapons. They keep threatening countries in the region, Japan, South Korea, um, and they create friction in their relationship with those countries and also the United States. So I think that at least he wants to assure that he keeps some influence over it. And um, because it could also be a bargaining chip, if you think about it, when it comes to negotiations or talks with North Korea, then a mediator could be China.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very valuable in the diplomacy, the relationship with the US.
It's interesting because I think China is just trying to keep a lid on North Korea and
Exactly.
providing a certain amount of aid and making sure that they don't uh, kind of dissemble. It's I, basically they're the ones that are keeping a lid on North Korea at this point
Hmm.
because they are an economic and agricultural lifeline. Because it doesn't seem that Russia would be able to provide that kind of support. So, with what is going on in North Korea, we don't really know, but there have been reports that people are starving and that they're not able to bring up their standard of living to something that is sustainable. So, it's really difficult to figure out what exactly is happening. And for everything to be plowed into this nuclear program, it's not the worst thing that China is trying to keep a lid on North Korea, but it is you do have to worry about what they're willing to give up because China is willing to look the other way in so
Hmm.
many different places, which is exactly what's happening with the Belt and Road Initiative. They're able to have relationships with these authoritarian governments, and they're willing to look the other way because they're just trying to mine for some critical minerals in Africa. So it is something that the United States kind of says, "Oh, we make sure that people have guardrails, and we'll do business with people that won't violate human rights." Well, China's willing to look the other way, and that's exactly what they're doing with North Korea. But they're also making sure that they're not escalating with their
Exactly.
nuclear weapon program.
Yeah. Because I think that they know how the strong position that North Korea has regarding their nuclear program. They are simply not going to give it up,
Hmm.
not for China, not for the US, and that's it. So I guess that she thinks, well, this guy is really, he really wants it. So I better just leave it as it is and try to maintain some diplomatic relations without stirring things up. And as you said, looking the other way. Thank you, Meredith, for the analysis. Now let's delve into what's happening in Ireland. So the controversy revolves around the Oganish alumina refinery, which is a refinery located in Ireland. It's Europe's largest alumina refinery and one of the most important suppliers of the material in the continent. But before I continue, we should talk very quickly about alumina. This is the raw material that comes from the mining and processing of bauxite, which is a reddish kind of ore. So after the processing, the result is a white powder called alumina. And then this is further processed into aluminum, which is one of the most used metals in the world. You can find aluminum in everything from everyday things like beverage cans and smartphones to airplanes or electric vehicles, power lines, renewable energy infrastructure, and many, many more, and of course also weaponry. It is a fundamental component for missiles, rockets, drones, and firearms. Now, the controversy is that Oganish Alumina is owned by Rusal, a Russian aluminum giant. This company was also founded by the Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, who recently donated millions to the Russian state treasury. So, anyways, afterwards, those smelters turn the alumina into aluminum that will eventually enter supply chains connected to the Russian defense manufacturers. So, why is this controversial? Ireland has been one of Ukraine's strongest supporters. They have provided hundreds of millions of euro in humanitarian assistance. The country has hosted thousands of Ukrainian refugees, and they have provided them with social services. Now, they have not provided military assistance because it is a neutral country. But the problem is that now you can argue that Irish produced alumina is helping Russia's military industrial sector. Therefore, it is indirectly helping sustain Russia's war effort. So you could technically just stop the exports, right? But the refinery is a major employer in Limerick, which is a region in Ireland, and it supports hundreds of direct jobs and other indirect jobs. And at the same time, it is also an important supplier to the European industry. Right now, the situation is that the Irish government launched an investigation to look further into the allegations, because let's remember that these allegations are the result of a report from the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. So there has been a lot of pushback from some politicians regarding the numbers and the evidence shown in the report. So that's why the Irish government is looking more into it to see if indeed they are helping the Russian war economy. There are already voices rooting for the ban of any type of alumina export to Russia, even if it's for domestic use, because you can also argue that they can keep selling it as long as it's for domestic use. But we know that at the same time, it would eventually end up somehow through other ways in this same network of the Russian defense sector. So what I think that is going to happen is that the EU and Ireland will introduce stricter rules or stricter oversight over the company. I don't think that alumina will end up being part of the sanctioned products in the new package of sanctions against Russia. Because, again, some policymakers have been arguing that it would be a higher blow to the EU than to Russia, because Russia could replace, could find the alumina somewhere else. But is that true? How easy would it be? I think it would somehow affect either ways. And the other thing is that for a couple of years now, especially since the war started, that there's evidence of lobbying against the sanctioning of this material for a reason. So I don't think that all that influence into not sanctioning it is just going to go away. We already hear a lot of pushback, obviously from the people, again, that depend on these jobs, but also with arguments like it is not illegal to export alumina, well, precisely because it hasn't been ruled out as such. So it's a very, very, very complex situation. But I don't think that they're going to put sanctions on alumina.
Global supply chains are so complicated. It's really difficult to nail down where every single material is going. This is something you see a lot in Africa, where you don't know where the gold actually came from. Is it actually from a
Mm.
legitimate certified mine, or is it from an illegal mine? So it is very complicated just at the base of the actual problem. But then on top of that, Ireland is a country that is very proud of the fact that they have stayed neutral for so long. Um, they're not a part of NATO. They are uh, trying to do the right thing. They've also got the EU presidency coming up. So that is something that, with this issue coming up right beforehand, it is going to be something that um, could come under their presidency. So it's such a complicated issue. And then trying to sanction an EU country from doing something isn't really the point of the sanctions. It's to get the other country to stop what they're doing. So it's being a part of the next sanctions package would be really setting a new precedent of like you're sanctioning your own. And this is, but it's an export, it's not an import, like buying Russian gas or oil when going through the Nord Stream pipelines and whatnot. So those things need to be taken into context and remember the people of Limerick who need jobs. But also it's you are contributing to Russia's war machine. But that's the problem with having such a globalized economy and having
Hmm.
supply chains that are so complex, you don't really know where everything is coming from. Um, yeah, it's just it's such a hard problem because you could be it could be happening anywhere and somebody else could be helping to feed the war machine.
Exactly. And it's also the fact that everything going up, it all connects to Russia directly, unfortunately. So we have who owns Organish Alumina, it's Rusal. Who owns Rusal or who founded it? Then this Russian oligarch.
Who
So
has his
one of
hands in
the
like everything? Like his name is everywhere when it comes to anything related to Russia. Like Oleg Deripaska, he knows everybody. His money is in everything. So he knows what he's doing.
exactly, exactly. And I'm pretty sure that somewhere along that line, he has a hold on either secrets or very important information or even assets that relate to important people in Ireland, because there has been an initiative or the idea since 2022 of nationalizing the refinery. But for some reason, at some point, it doesn't work out. And this wouldn't happen if there wasn't a pushback. And why is there a pushback? So that's the question. And finally, we will talk about Albania and Ivanka and Jared Kushner. So, Meredith, take it away.
Thousands of protesters have poured into central Tirana in Albania's capital, waving national flags and blow up flamingos this week. Those who have gathered believe that the government led by Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama has compromised on his promises to the people by passing a law in 2024 that changed to allow tourism projects of 5-star or higher projects can be built in environmentally protected areas around the country. This is an effort by the Prime Minister's strategy for tourism, but the spark for this protest came into public awareness when the former military island of Sazan was lined with fencing and spools of razor wire by a development group for a future real estate project. Locals arrived and clashed with private security guards, and a video of the attack spread rapidly online of a man being roughed up and dragged through the dirt by the guards. The development group that is working on Cezanne is called Affinity Projects, and they are partnered with Jared Kushner, who is Donald Trump's son in law and a Middle East envoy for the efforts in the negotiations with Iran. And this development group is to develop Cezanne into a 1.4 billion B resort that will include 10,000 hotel rooms and villas. With his wife, Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter. This her first encounter onto the island went pretty viral. She was on a podcast discussing her experience of when she landed on the island from her yacht. She was sailing through the Adriatic Sea, not the Mediterranean, like she said. Whatever. Geography nerds a lot.
Or listen,
Yeah.
for her it's like or whatever.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
She she hiked up this mountain barefoot and wandered around in the sea for a little bit. It's pretty hard to listen to. So the podcast interview has gone completely viral, and it further inflamed the protests. So this is not the this is this protest really shows how angry the people are about how this project is perceived. But this is not the first time that the Jared Kushner has eyes on the Balkans. In late 2025, a proposed $500 million redevelopment deal aimed at transforming the bombed out General Staff site in central Belgrade of Serbia was meant to become a luxury hotel, apartments, and a commercial space. This project would have potentially been the first Trump-branded hotel in Europe, and this was something that he was working on prior to the current administration. So Jared Kushner did spend a lot of time talking to the Serbian president about getting a hold of this complex, which was heavily damaged during NATO's 1999 bombing campaign, and it was later designated as a protected cultural heritage site. But this deal actually fell through in the December 2025, and it was due to lots of protests and a corruption case of alleged abuses of government office was linked to the removal of a heritage protection from the former Yugoslav Army General Staff complex. So this is not the first time he's had laws changed on his behalf. So it does create an image problem for him. So the Albanians are aware of this issue that just happened in Serbia. So it does seem that they're following in the same footsteps that the residents of Belgrade did. So they're not the only ones who are mad about this environmental law change. The European Commission has cautioned Albania against actions that may impact its EU accession path due to the EU's environmental rules, and that jeopardizing its ability to close the Green Chapter 27 in the accession talks. At the same time, the protesters are demanding that the Prime Minister Rama should resign. And according to Politico, Rama's response to the protests on June 5th was that if it wasn't Jared, they wouldn't give a shit. Which is just, yeah, it is Jared Kushner. It is problematic. So they should give a shit, but that's besides the point. And he also stated that the foreign property developers like Kushner are more important to Albania than its own people, which is kind of a smack in the face for them as well. According to demonstrators, opposition politicians, and civil society, the speed of developing Albania as a tourism hotspot has been very stressful on the environment while bringing very little economic benefit for its citizens. It is important to note that for the Albanian economy, tourism can be beneficial. Building hotels and restaurants, as well as having tourists visit cultural sites, can be a boon for the country. And you can have more taxis to get tourists around. There's all kinds of economic benefits to having tourism. They've got lots and lots of studies on that. And the prime minister himself said in 2023 that he would like to have a mixture of low-cost tourism and luxury tourism for Albania. And to clarify that, he said, what 400 yachts can generate is equal to what can be earned by 40,000 low-cost visitors. So he wants more people that are going to come to an island on their yacht, spend time only there, where maybe a couple hundred people will work there that are locals, and then they leave. They don't come on to the actual country and experience anything or provide any kind of incentive to the economy. So it is valid that they will be able to bring in a lot of money and spend a lot of money, but what that trickle down is, it doesn't work that way. Um, so it is valid, but those who wonder why we support these yachts, the way his words have been twisted, and he said this back in 2023, but people are bringing it up now. Like he just said that 400 yachts for 40,000 low-cost visitors just smacks of being like inconsistent, because when you read the entire transcript, he was saying that he wanted to have both. But
Hmm.
the words are coming back to haunt Rama after the removal of the environmental protection on the island. To develop this luxury resort is just it it's so inconsistent, and the people of Albania will not put up with it. Good for them.
Exactly. For them. Yeah, there are several points that you can go over, like several issues. And to me, what stood out the most is that part of, and you mentioned this, part of what is fueling all the protests is more than the development project itself. It's when Ivanka Trump was in this podcast, it's about the entitlement that she showed when she was talking about the island. Because, as you were saying, it's very difficult to listen to because she was on a yacht with her friends and like discovering a little bit the land, and she stumbled upon this beautiful island that had never been discovered with this kind of tone, when people already know this island and they go several times a year. Tourist guides take people there, and it's also about the, oh, I see it, I want it, I got it
Yeah,
mentality. And
yeah, it's
because
so gross.
exactly. And especially because, you have uh, uh, Jared Kushner, you have Ivanka Trump and Daddy Trump, and they're able to play their cards, their people, in order to have direct access to that discovered land without any permissions or authorizations going over the laws of the country. And that that shows the level of corruption or lack of transparency from the government that Albanians have had been putting up with for a long time already. And I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Uh, and,
Flamingo's back. Sorry.
and the flamingos back. The straw that broke the flamingos back. Thank you.
Sorry.
No. If you zoom out, I think that this this is part of a wider trend of wanting to transform a country into a tourist destination, specifically for ultra luxury type of tourism. We can see examples like Egypt. The UAE has been investing a lot in this kind of tourism in their own country, in the coast of Egypt. Saudi Arabia is also another example with all the Formula One tracks and hotels and tourism developed around that. So it is something that has been happening. It's part of a wider trend. Yeah, it generates jobs and contributes to the country's GDP, but it also comes with a dilemma of how do you develop economically without damaging the natural assets or the natural resources of that country while still trying to grow economically. And it's worth it to actually go over people's wishes. It's democratic even. So yeah,
Yeah, it's just
no.
like it's a really gross story on top of like being politically really corrupt, and you're
Mm-hmm.
obviously trying to curry favor with the president of the United States.
Yeah.
This isn't the first instance where government officials have tried to get to Trump through his children. Newsflash, won't even show up to his son's wedding. So, probably not barking up the right tree. Maybe not go through the children, but Jared Kushner has a lot more influence. He's got his um, private equity fund that is funded by the Saudis. So
Mm-hmm.
this isn't, he's not stupid. He knows what he's doing. And building your own little island, your own private island, probably not good for optics when there's so many other things going on with other private islands. So it's just, I don't know. It's just what a really bad example, but what a great point for the Albanian people to say, we see what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. We want you to stop. You're not going to fly under the radar anymore with this. And we want environmental protections. We want to be a part of the economic boon that is supposed to provide. And there's no evidence that very little evidence that this will actually benefit the Albanian people. So good for them. Rise up.
Now, the question is, do you think the protests will lead somewhere?
Man, I hope
I
so.
think,
I mean, if you do
yeah,
look
I
at what
hope so
happened
too.
in Belgrade, like they stopped that project. So at least like one of them was stopped. So you follow that blueprint and you keep on protesting. Follow what the Serb people did because that worked. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, because they already have machinery. There's already construction work happening in that area.
We just have to hope that Ivanka
Uh,
Trump doesn't turn into Veruca Salt from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Daddy, I want it now.
And with that, we conclude this week's discussion. As always, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe and follow us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. This episode will be available on Monday, so stay tuned as we keep unpacking why geopolitics matter.
For more articles on why geopolitics matters, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at whygeopoliticsmatter.com.